All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuleyomy's October Nature and You lecture. This is going to be our last lecture for 2025. We'll be back in January. I'm Jeff Ben, Tuleyomy's Education Associate. If you don't know, Tuleyomy is a conservation nonprofit based in Woodland, California. Our mission is to engage in advocacy and active stewardship with diverse communities to conserve, enhance, restore, and enjoy the lands in the region. The region that we focus on is the northern Intercoast Range and neighboring areas of the Central Valley. We particularly focus on the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, which we recently led the effort to expand. In addition to our public lands advocacy work, we also do a variety of education programs, including K-12 field trips, a really great certified California naturalist course. We have natural history and policy articles in our newsletter, and of course, this monthly lecture series. We also run a range of adventures programs, including hikes, trail building days, wildflower tours, and our youth boot bank, which provides free loans of hiking boots to kids. If you'd like to learn more about these or any of our other projects, you can do so at our website, tuleyome.org. On to tonight's lecture. Tuleyomy is supported by donations from folks like you. If you haven't already done so and are able to, we greatly appreciate a donation to help support the good work that we do. For tonight's lecture, we are very lucky to have Marc Hochovsky and Bob Schneider with us. Marc Hochovsky is a retired naturalist who spent 30 years working for state government on endangered species habitat conservation planning throughout California. He has bachelor's degrees in biology and geology and a master's degree in ecology, and he is also an avid local historian. Bob Schneider is a co-founder of Tuleyome and was a key strategist for many of our campaigns, including the Cache Creek State Wild and Scenic River, establishment of the Cedar Ruffs and Cache Creek wildernesses, and dedication of the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument. Bob has a bachelor's degree in geology. He co-founded the California Wilderness Coalition in 1976 and served as the California Wild Heritage Director. He's been on Tuleyomy's advisory council since 2022. And so the reason we have Marc and Bob with us tonight is that they are co-authors, along with Peter Schiffman and Tim Messick, of the new book, Exploring the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, which is due out this fall from Backcountry Press. And tonight they're going to be sharing some highlights from their book. During the talk, if you have any questions, let's hang on to those, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. All right, with that, I will hand things over to Bob and Marc.
Hello, everybody, including Tim. It's nice to have you on, Tim. And I want to thank, in particular, there's a donor on here that really helped this book get done. And I appreciate that deeply. And there's, if anybody else wants to help with some of the book expenses, and all the profits from this book, royalties, if there are any, all go to nonprofits in the local area. And Tuleyomy's handling the book sales locally a lot, and I really appreciate their help on doing that. And hopefully they'll do well with this effort. It's in a fascinating area, the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, which is on both BLM and Forest Service lands. And that also, the addition to the National Monument, which is Moloch Loyuk, that was done, well, the monument was done in July 10th, 2014, and the Moloch Loyuk edition was May 2nd in 2024. That's right. So it's about 340,000 acres of wild spaces and canyons and mountaintops, and we'll try and talk about this a little while. A lot of us got together a while ago, and we realized there just isn't the interpretive materials for people to visit this national monument and really take advantage of what they're seeing, understanding plate tectonics, the conservation of biology, which Marc will talk about. The cultural history of this region is extremely rich, and the languages are incredibly diverse. There's about, I think we have about 15 to 21 Well, there's 31 tribes in and around the national monument and the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Forest. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Mark, you want to
Oh,
look
yeah.
that?
Oops, sorry.
That's it. Yeah, so this is a shot of Eldridge Moores and Peter Schiffman. We're dedicating this book to both of them. Eldridge died during the writing of our first book, and he was from 1938 to 2018. And sadly and unfortunately, Peter Schiffman died during the writing of our second book, and he was from 1957 to 2023. They were dear friends, and they were the inspiration, and Judy Moore's also Eldridge's wife, of writing our books. And I'm being photobombed here by Marc Hochovsky, one of my co-writers, who's just a wonderful, wonderful, talented person that just gets stuff done. So thank you for that, Mark. Let's go on to the next slide here. And what is this place? That's the question I think people ask. You can find it on the maps, but you can find some information on the BLM and Forest Service and the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument web pages. There's not really a lot of on-the-ground interpretive information. So this is just some of the beauty there. And at the top, we're seeing Snow Mountain, which is 7,056 feet. This is taken from the southwest, looking up towards the mountain. Down below is Cache Creek, and on the right side of this is a trail road that you can walk. I mean, this is an accessible area for a lot of people, but it's also very remote. Next. This is what you get when you explore this place. The Cache Creek is the largest wintering area for bald eagles south of the Klamath Basin. There's 3 tule elk herds, adobe lilies, a rare and endemic species, and there's lots of others. And there's wildflowers. This is Bear Valley, and I suspect that many of you have visited Bear Valley in the spring when the flowers are blooming. It's an awesome place. And behind this, in the back, is gravel.
Oops. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. We'll go on.
Okay.
So, you know, geology was a love of mine. I studied it in school, although I was working on the establishment as a volunteer of the Redwood National Park then, and also I was climbing in Yosemite, so I wasn't studying as much as I should have, and I'm making up for it at this time. So some of the rocks here, they illustrate plate tectonics, and you'll learn more about that as we talk about it. Blue schist is moderately metamorphosed or fairly metamorphosed rock that's found in the Franciscan Formation that's been subducted. And the other rock's one of my favorites is metalliferous chert. And these are formed in mid-oceanic hotspots or ridges, forearc basins. When you get these femoral that you've probably seen in National Geographic magazines, in the old days anyway, they bubble up, and up with that black smoke is a lot of iron. And that iron settles out, and at the same time, radiolarian skeletons are raining down from the top of the ocean onto the ocean floor, and they combine, they get subducted and metamorphosed, and they produce this rock. And what's interesting is when you pick it up, it weighs a lot more than you think it would weigh. So it's because it's got all that iron, so it's fun. And the bottom, and this will Mark will talk in more detail about these things, but we're saying that the Great Valley Group and these ridges of sandstone and shale, and the sandstone, hardened sandstone, stand up these ridges. So these were submarine fans that have been tilted up very steeply. And that's partly a compression of the width of California, say, that it compresses together. And as it does that, you get these anticlines and synclines. So what was this long gets to be that long. And then you get fault blocks going up and down that also shorten the crust. So that's one of the ways that this landscape is formed. Mark? Oh, recreation. This is this is doing the wilderness run from Highway 20, the Redbud Trailhead, down through the Cass Creek Wilderness to the Bear Creek Cass Creek confluence. It's for experienced people rafting. Nobody's guiding that now. So if you're going to go down, that's great. But go with people that know the creek and have enjoyed it. This is running just before the takeout is Mad Mike or Upset Mike or Pissed Off Mike, depending on the day and the water flow levels. But it's this is actually me and my wife Liz having fun. So and we are in a kayak, an inflatable kayak. That's what we usually use. So thanks, Mark. So we talk about the geology. We also talk about the beauty, and even these waterfalls that we see are a product of the geology. But it's just these canyons and these places. This is one of the more accessible places. It's a flat valley primarily that you walk up. It's easy walking, except you have to cross the stream about 14 times. And of course, if there's not much water in the stream, that's nice for wading, but you're not going to see this big waterfall. So figure on getting your boots wet, take an extra pair of socks and enjoy. Thanks.
All right, so this is where I take over. So Bob's basically trying to illustrate what the place is. I wanted to tell you where this place is. Here's a map of northwestern California. In the bottom, you can see San Francisco. Up on the upper left, Eureka. And the green stripe down the middle of the map is the National Forest land. The area outlined in the dotted black line is the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument. Extends about 100 miles north and south. It's between the coastal area and the Central Valley. And here's more of a close-up of the National Monument. Again, you can see the black dotted line is the National Monument. And this National Monument covers a range of elevations from near basically almost sea level to over 7,000 feet at Snow Mountain. It goes from the moist coast on the west into the dry interior Central Valley. There's 4 major watersheds in here. In the south, there's Puda Creek watershed. Then north of that is the Cache Creek watershed. And north of that, towards the northern end, is the Stony Creek watershed. Draining on the west side is the Eel River watershed. The National Forest and the National Monument is formerly only Forest Service and BLM lands. The green shows the Mendocino National Forest, and the yellow shows the BLM land. And a lot of these areas, there are many parts of this public land have been recognized for a long time. There's 4 wilderness areas in there and 7 other special management areas. There are 5 designated recreation areas within the monument. And there's, our book doesn't just focus on the monument, it focuses on the region because there are other federal, state, local, and nonprofit conservation lands that are really part of this whole system. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife, for example, has 32,000 acres of wildlife areas in the monument or near the monument. University of California Natural Reserve System has 4 reserves. So I'm going to pass this back to Bob now, who's going to talk more about the National Monument and establishment of that.
Thanks, Mark. And I want to thank you for emphasizing that we talk about the Berryessa Snow Mountain region. I mean, what we talk about doesn't stop at these boundaries, but the federal lands generally do. So in the 4 federal lands that, we'll talk about probably in about 5 years that maybe should be a part of this. But anyway, the monument was established in July 10th, as I said, 2015. And it took a lot of work from a lot of people. It was a huge collaboration. At the very first meeting we had talking about this possibility, we also talked about what kind of campaign we wanted to have. And our emphasis and conclusion unanimously from everybody in that room that day was we want this to be an inclusive campaign. If people care about our public lands, they should be and can be a part of this campaign. We had user groups, including off-road vehicle people. We had hunters and anglers, conservation people and organizations, businesses, elected officials, cities, towns, supervisors. It was a large collaborative group. And if we hadn't done that, and all those people didn't come together, we would not have this national monument. So that inclusiveness is carried through, and all of our discussions, when there's any conflicts, we work them out. We talk about it, and those groups came together again to work on Moloch Luyok, which was Walker Ridge, which is a 14,000 acre addition to the national monument. And what was critically important about this is the leadership came from a large extent from the Yochadihi Winton Nation. And the tribal people, we tried to engage earlier in the original campaign in 2015, but the capacity was not there and the awareness wasn't quite there. And we were able to re-engage, and Sandra did a lot of helping on opening up the doors when we went to this campaign for Moloch Luyok. And that was finally added to the national monument. The first part was Obama signed it, the declaration, and Biden signed the declaration May 2nd in 2024, almost 10 years later. It was exciting. This was the celebration that was followed in the March after the designation, about 8 or 9 months later. And we just had like our Congress people here, and Mike Thompson played a big role. John Garrett Mendes played a big role. Sally Jewell was the Secretary of Resources for this when this happened. And oh God, I'm missing her name, the woman that was just Secretary of Resources. Senior moment. We'll come to that. I'll remember that. Deb. Anyway, sorry. We'll go on. Thank you, Mark. This map is about native languages, and it has trade routes and approximate village sites throughout this region. And this isn't the full 31 tribes, but there's a lot of different tribes. Each of these markings has clans associated with it, but they represent a moment in time. It didn't look like this before this happened, and this is to picture the time of contact with Europeans, basically, or Mexicans, or Spanish and Mexicans. So it was quite different, say 500 or 1,000 or 8,000 years ago. And then it evolved to this is what it is. And now it's, of course, much different than it is then. So it's an important moment of time, but it's important also it's in this sequence of time that this happened. When we started looking at this, we started this. I mean, you can look at linguistics, you can look at patterns of tool making, you can look at DNA or my mitochondrial DNA. You can look at the tribal lore, and to try and tell the story about how people got here, how our Native American friends arrived. And we can't really tell their story. We can kind of tell what we know about the events. And hopefully out of this process, there's a lot of literature that didn't exist even 10 or 20 years ago. So that story is beginning to be told. And the Yuki tribe, one minute, I got a couple more on this.
We're short on time here, Bob.
All right. Well, we had worked through these language groups. So the Yuki up in the northwest were the first tribes to arrive, and then the Hokan or Pomi tribes arrived, and the last ones are newcomers, like 1,500 or 2,000 years ago, and those were all the Winton, Hillputwan, and Numalaki. Those people arrived in about 1,500 years ago. Thanks, Mark. When they arrived, explorers, missionaries, gold seekers. They entered California like from the 16th century through the 19th, and they rarely saw it as a land carefully tended. And this was written by Kate Anderson, and I'm summarizing a bit of that. And she's actually a professor at UC Davis. But it's tended by a large population of people with remarkable and diverse cultures. Instead, their arrival was like crossing the plains and dealing, I mean, they were killing Indians then, and they arrived and they were distorted by this ignorance of what was going on and their prejudice, and they weren't spending the time to really sort this out. And this is a history of European heritage as one of subjugation and devastation of both the land and the people. So we tell about the events, but again, we can't talk about the emotions of these people that are still real today. Mark? These were some of the things that happened. One, there was American genocide. It's not a pretty word. That's sort of what it's what happened. There were just a lot of massacres. Bloody Island was one at Clear Lake. Native tribes, a small group of people killed 2 white settlers who had abused them. They'd shipped off people to the Sacramento Valley. They'd starved them basically, and they retaliated and killed them. And there was just a drastic, over disproportional response to that, and there was like 200 or 800 natives killed. One of the things that I've been able to participate in over the 2 years was the Nome Cult Trail, and this was a forced march from Chico to Covelo. They started with 461 people, and they ended up with 277, and the rest of the people kind of left along the trail. Now, for the last 30 years, ancestors of some of those people have developed a commemorative walk from Chico to Covelo every year. And I didn't walk all of that, but I got to walk pieces of that with these folks. And it's quite emotional walking with people who had been there. And I saw there was a hint there that Deb Holland was who I was trying to think of in this second round, who was also tribal. So this sign, the Nome Cult Trail, there's one at Pasquinta Workstation, one at the Eel River Workstation. Those are the Mendocino National Forest that tell this story. And this was developed with tribal input to the story they wanted to tell. I think that's really critical, and I really commend the Mendocino National Forest for the outreach and work that they've done with tribes. Next.
So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about both the geology and the ecology of this region. This region is one of the most geologically diverse areas in the world. Eldridge Moore's told us this is the best place to see plate tectonics on land. Has features of worldwide significance. Geologists from around the world know about this place because you can see tectonics in action on the land instead of going down into some deep marine trench. This region has all 3 of the major rock types. The areas in beige and green on the right side are sedimentary. They're part of the Great Valley group. The areas up in blue on the upper left are metamorphic rocks from the Franciscan complex. And there's igneous rocks, but volcanic rocks, such as in the middle, upper north part here, the Snow Mountain volcanic terrain. Down south of Clear Lake, there's the Clear Lake volcanics and the Sonoma volcanics. This region also has all 3 of the types of tectonic plate boundaries. One type of boundary is where both tectonic plates slide past each other. It's a transform fault. You've probably heard, the San Andreas Fault. That's a transform fault where the North American plate slides by the Pacific plate. Well, this red line right through the middle of the National Monument region is Bartlett Springs Fault and other extensions in the south. It's the easternmost branch of the San Andreas Fault. There's rocks along here that have been sheared and offset for over up to 20 miles by this tectonic movement. This area also has divergent plate boundaries in which plates are formed, they're separating. A lot of the basalts that you find in this area are oceanic basalts from ocean crust. It was formed at mid-ocean spreading centers. But one of the big stories here is really the third type of plate boundary, and that's a convergent boundary where plates actually collide. So I'm going to show you a cross section here in the southern part of the monument to illustrate what that roughly looks like. This is a conceptual drawing which illustrates what is really one of the longest lived subduction zones on Earth. This operated for about 100 million years. It produced so many different types of rocks. The diversity is just really incredible because of the way this thing worked. This is a picture of what may have looked like around 60 to 70 million years ago. Just a snapshot in time, but it tells the history of the area. Here you can see the large purple area, which is the Pacific Plate, being subducted under the area to the right, which is the North American Plate. Before this subduction started, a chunk of the ocean crust was basically uplifted and placed on top of the North American continent. That's called the Coast Range ophiolite. Ocean crust is denser than continental crust. It typically goes underneath it. So this is a really unusual piece of crust to have it on top of the continent. As this compression continued, there were these volcanic seamounts out on the ocean floor, and they were subducted down. One of them was subducted partway down, and that's actually Snow Mountain, which eventually rose back up to the surface to be 7,000 feet above sea level. As this plate was being subducted, parts of it were being scraped off and piled up here right at the leading edge of the subduction trench. That's called the Franciscan Formation. This is where you get a lot of metamorphic rocks. Some of those rocks were dragged down really deeply and turned into blue schist and eclogites. These are high pressure metamorphic rocks formed 12 to 18 miles deep. While this was going on, the North American Plate on the right was being uplifted. This is where you had the Sierra Nevada being formed. That's outside of the picture here. But there was erosion happening, and those sediments washed down into this, what's known as a forearc basin, and piled up. The green here are those sediments. This is the Great Valley Group. They're submarine fans formed underneath the sea level by just cascading turbidity currents off the continental slope. As part of this pressure, the North American Plate fractured, and you can see these black lines, dotted lines. These are the faults, normal faults, where the North American Plate, the edge is just cracking up. And those faults provided a conduit for material from deep down on the subducted plate, way down here, where as this rock got pressed deeper and deeper, the pressures basically squeezed out and dehydrated the rock, and that water rose upwards, grabbing all kinds of rocks, blue schist, basalt, serpentine, and it ran right up those fault lines and oozed out onto the surface as serpentine mud volcanoes. This continued pressure happened. These rocks kept moving towards the trench, and there was basically a recycling. Some of these rocks went through this process more than once. Gives you an idea of this. This is kind of a quick snapshot of how there's so many different types of rocks that are right here in the National Monument region. Let me illustrate some of the main ones. The Great Valley Group that I mentioned, these are the submarine fans being washed off the Sierra and the Klamath region. Massive submarine fans formed about 65 to 150 million years ago. Since then, the continued tectonic pressures have uplifted these and pushed them up vertically. This picture at the very bottom is near Monticello Dam at Lake Berryessa, and you can just look north along the ridgeline and just see all those sediments that have been uplifted. The second major feature is the Franciscan complex. And as I mentioned, these were at the leading edge of that trench. This is where the sediments were crushed. They were folded, some of the folding that was of sediments, as well as some of those really deep rocks that were dragged up from the bottom, from really deep up along these faults from 12 to 18 miles. And the third major type of rock is the Coast Range ophiolite, or it's really a melange of serpentine, so we call it serpentinite melange. And this is that part of the ocean crust that was pushed up on top of North America before all these other rocks were being formed. And in the lower picture here, the purple, this is an aerial view of Moloch Luyuk looking north along the ridge. The purple is the serpentinite melange. The bluish is the Franciscan underneath it that was piled up at that leading edge of the trench. That ophiolite, that serpentinite melange, had a lot of faults in it, and those faults formed a lot of minerals that became very valuable as Americans started settled in this area. This is where a lot of the mercury mines were developed. That mercury was used during the gold rush to extract gold from rock. But it also had mines for chromium, manganese, gold, platinum, silver. So this map is an illustration of it just shows where those historic mines are. Most of them are no longer in operation, but mining was a really big part of the history. This compression I was telling you about also brought up a lot of hot minerals, hot fluids from deep in the crust. And there's also some other volcanic stuff that's happening underneath the Clear Lake area even today. And it's produced a lot of mineral springs, both hot and cold. Those became one of the largest health resort booms in the West during the 19th century. People came from all over to take the waters, basically looking for cures for their various diseases. Several of these health resorts are still in business. Some of you have been to Wilbur Hot Springs or Harbin Hot Springs. This is a historical look at some of those mineral resorts. The upper picture shows Cook Springs Hotel in 1877. This is just actually south of Stonyford on the east side of the Monument region. And there was a two-story hotel with carpeted rooms, 35 cabins. They could accommodate 150 people. They had a swimming pool there. And actually, if you walk out there, you can see the foundation of that swimming pool still there. The bottom picture shows Bartlett Springs. This was one of the most popular resorts. It was established in 1871 and formed a major stage stop as people crossed from the Sacramento Valley out to the coast. So that's a little bit about some of the history, the geology. This place has renowned biological diversity. This is an image of Bear Valley at probably around 1,000 feet, showing the elevation range up to Snow Mountain at 7,000 feet. You can find in the region, you can have low elevation grasslands all the way up to these montane landscapes. It's the largest block of mostly intact natural vegetation in the northern Coast Range. And as that forms an essential habitat connectivity link in California, connecting the San Francisco Bay Area with northwestern California. There's a lot of different kinds of habitats. This is at the intersection of several major ecoregions. It's a biological hotspot. There are hundreds of animal species and plant species, many which are rare, endangered, or sensitive. There are high concentrations of sensitive plant species in several places. Moloch, for example, has a concentration of 17 sensitive plant species just there on the ridge. There's just a lot of diversity. And I also wanted to highlight these McNabb cypress. The cypresses in the area are really cool trees. They're fire adapted, and actually they depend on fire to open the cones. But I'll get into fire here next. Fire is an essential ecosystem process. It's a natural part of California's ecosystem. And many plants have adapted to small, frequent fires. They have thick or corky bark like ponderosa pine. They can resprout after fires like a variety of oaks, madrone, a lot of chaparral species. Some of the cones, like I mentioned with the cypress, but also knobcone pine, really require the heat of a fire to open up the cones and to initiate germination. And these small, frequent fires were often maintained. This was a fire escape, basically, that was maintained by the native people. This picture I'm showing you illustrates some of how fast some of the plants can recover if they're given time between fires. A picture of the August 2015 fire in Cold Canyon, and then 8 months later, there's a lot of resprouting, a lot of plants coming back. The problem is the fire regimes have changed dramatically within the last 100 years. There's more people in this area, there's more ignitions. There were decades of fire suppression that allowed fuel loads to build up. When you had frequent small fires, you never had that amount of fuel building up. But now with the suppression, there's a lot of places are just ripe for fires. And sure enough, with drier, warmer climate, we're now having more frequent catastrophic fires, especially in the last 10 years. This is a map of the fire history between 2000 and 2020. It shows the number of times lands have burned, and you can see that the yellow is places have burned at least once. Well, most of the Berryessa Snow Mountain region burned, most of it, almost all of it burned in about 3 separate fires, 2015, 2018, and 2020. If you look down at the lower end of the map along Berryessa, there's a little inset map. And I'll bring your attention to the upper right here. This is an inset of Putah Creek Canyon. And the numbers here show how many fires have burned per piece of land in that 20-year period. And there's a place that's burned almost every other year. This is the most frequently burned area in California. So I'm going to pass it back. I was basically telling you some more about the geology, ecology, and fires. I'm going to pass it back to Bob now.
Thanks, Mark. There's a lot of stories in this place, and you heard a few of them in a very short period of time, and we hope that piqued your interest a bit. There's certainly a lot more stories to tell that are in this book, and a lot we weren't able to include, but you'll, I think, enjoy seeing what you see. We've organized it in the first part of the book, the first 5 chapters, which are the culture and the geology and the biology and stuff we talked about. And then there's 2 chapters. Chapter 6 is the southern part of the monument, and the chapter 7 is the northern part of the monument. And those are road tours and descriptions of roads, so you can get out and enjoy this area and see a little bit about what you're looking at and what to know about before you go there. So next, Mark. This is an example on the southern end. You could circle it, Mark, with the printer, but there's one of the things that really led to knowing about this area was the nature and culture major that was at UC Davis. And they used to take trips with their students and buses to circumambulate, going up Pewter Creek watershed and then down the Cass Creek watershed. So they go up 128 and then over to Pope Valley, Middletown, down 20, and then down 16 to Esparto. And then these were usually taken from Davis, but that's most of those trips. And there's some alternate tours also within that you can take. At the northern part of this is the tour. It's one of my favorites. It's close, easy to get to. It's a dirt road. You don't want to go when it's real wet, but it's Moloch, Leoc, and Bear Valley. They're just it's an amazing place, and you see a lot of what we're talking about in a very small area there. So these tours are there, and there's stops along the way, so you can really enjoy that. That's my sales pitch. Be sure and go get.
Oh, sorry.
You're going to like it, I hope, and tell your friends. So a couple more pieces to finish up here. Mark, next. I like this. It's part of the Moloch Leoc tour, and it shows where Mark was talking about the TCSM, which is the Hamacalusa Serpentinite Melange, on top of the Franciscan. It's faulted in place by the Coast Range Fault. And then the road goes from the right side of the picture to the south, to the north side on the left of the picture. And so we thought, let's make a cross section, which is into the ground and on top. The dotted lines in the bottom part of that picture are where these probably went above ground. And it shows you kind of why, and the road description, you're going in and out of these time frames of these different rock types that they illustrate. So the road basically goes through the Great Valley Group, it goes through the Melange, it goes through the Franciscan and the Melange and the Franciscan and the Melange, so you're just bouncing around. But this is why. It's not totally complicated, and it's all bent up as an anticline because you drive right over the Wilbur Springs anticline. So it's complex, and we tried to simplify that as much as possible. So I hope you enjoyed that. Mark? Like we say, get out there, explore, see it on the ground, and we hope our book provides a reference so you can really see what you're seeing. There's lots of recreation, hiking, boating, photography. You can do hunting or angling. And I hope you just really enjoy being out there. And if you're a legal off-road vehicle driver, there's actually spots set aside with trails for off-road vehicles. So that's cool. Next. This is our last slide. This is the Forest Service sign for the monument. The BLM sign's a little different, but that's fine. I want to read this quick. It's from Kim Stanley Robinson, who probably many of you know. He was a science fiction writer till he wrote his first non-fiction book on the High Sierra Love Story, that was called it. This is a beautiful example of what community can do to protect, support, and explain a local region. In this case, one of the most complex and interesting geologic and biological hotspots on the planet. It's a guide for good actions of all kinds, physical, political, and spiritual. I know Eldridge Moores would have loved it, and now, like him, it can be an inspiration to us all. So thank you all very, very much. This is our first talk we've given in the book, and it's a little rough in places, but we'll get there. And I hope it inspires you. Thanks. Thanks, Vicki.
All right. Thank you so much, Bob and Mark, for an excellent talk. I'm even more excited about the book than I was beforehand. Definitely looking forward to that. And so if folks have questions, you can type them in the chat, and I'd be happy to relay them to Bob and Mark. Or if you'd like to raise your hand and ask over audio, that would be fine as well. Sandy?
Can you, each of you, tell us maybe like one of your favorite places within the region and why?
Well, there's a couple. One, I love boating Cache Creek, and you can see the photo for that, and that's it isn't just the excitement. There aren't big rapids on this, but you see wildlife. You see bald eagles, you see golden eagles, you see egrets, you see um, great blue herons. We've seen bears, we've seen tule elk and deer. You don't see those in a lot of other rivers like this. I mean, it's a wild place. So that's cool. The Bear Creek Campground, which is in the Mendocino National Forest. It's on the M10 road, and it's one of my favorite little campgrounds. And it's actually almost where that photo of Snow Mountain from the Southwest was taken. It's a great place. I like the West Crockett Campground that's just north of Snow Mountain, and I love hiking the Crooked Tree Trail. So, and I think that Crooked Tree Trail may have been an ancestral trading route thousands of years ago. So,
I one of my favorite areas actually is the route between around Ladoga down to Leesville on the east side of the monument. If you go there in the spring, you can take this just really nice rural gravel road, and it's like going through California of the 1850s. There's a scattered ranches here and there, but there's no towns. It's this beautiful blue oak woodland, grass around, and it's a very pastoral, peaceful landscape that most people don't appreciate because you have to go on a gravel road, but it is the main north-south route through some of those interior valleys. I've got lots of other favorite spots up there, but that's the first one that pops into my head.
and I'd say one of the questions somebody was wondering about pre-ordering, and the book is nearly complete. Poor Mark has to do all the indexing, and he's really good at stuff like that. So thank you, Mark. But we're anticipating that our publisher will send this book to the printer on November 3rd. That's the date for the printer to engage. And we should have books by December 1st. Pre-orders will come through Backcountry Press. You'll be able to find on their website that information. If you're bought books or you're signed up with Backcountry Press, they'll be sure and get you information, I'm sure. Thanks.
I have a question. I'm wondering, I know that you mentioned Bear Creek campsite where I've camped. Crabtree Hot Springs is pretty near that campsite. And I'm wondering if you know what the current status of that is. For a while, it was not, you couldn't go there.
It's still that way. It's privately owned, and they put a big gate up. It's been torn down numerous times. I don't know what the state of that gate is, but they're blocking a road that's been used for a very long time, and it was certainly a trading route long before that. So I've heard it's for sale off and on, but they think, oh, this is going to be a great big resort, so this property is valuable. That's not happening. But until somebody just, there's an opportunity that comes up, and there's either land water conservation funds that might can purchase it, or someone like Tuleyome can step up in the breach and purchase that property in the interim until the Forest Service has funding to purchase it. Sandy, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you just got to let us know where it is and we'll see what we can do.
Does that answer your question, Jeff? Good.
A question in the chat about whether you get into any information on like backpacking routes or campsites or campgrounds, that kind of thing.
We do. We mention trails that some of the roads go by and stuff, but a lot of that particular information is on the Forest Service or the BLM websites, and all the hiking trails, most all of them in the monument, are on Tuleyome's website. So we didn't revisit that issue so much. We were trying to look at issues that the information isn't really out there very much.
The Forest Service and BLM have a really nice brochure that's available online that shows a map of the northern part of the monument and the southern. It shows all of the trailheads, trails, a lot of the recreation opportunities. So it's really out there, and we didn't want to duplicate that, but we highlighted a few of those things. But I encourage you to go to the National Monument website, and you'll see that brochure.
And I want to acknowledge Tim Messick that's on today. Tim was our illustrator, part author, part illustrator, a detailed checker on facts and information. Tim, thank you so much. Do you want to say anything? You're muted, but
Well, if Tim wants to join in, I'll just add to that. Tim has incredible artistic skill. He's able to find the right colors, to find simple lines, to really help us clarify some of the concepts. What we were taking diagrams from scientific literature that were just all black and white and sometimes hatches and 30 years old, and we wanted to simplify that. We knew there was a clear message in there that we could relate, and Tim was just invaluable in helping design that. So all the graphics you've seen in this show, all the graphics in the book, that's Tim. He's just incredible.
Thanks, Mark.
I've said nice things too, Tim.
And Bob.
I collaborators that worked on this book for 3 or 4 years over some really hard times. I think I had the greatest time, and I think all of us did, just working through stuff and getting stuff done. So
one of the most valuable lessons I took from working on this book is that it really gave me an understanding of a landscape. We normally don't spend a lot of time looking at landscape in a variety of different ways, culturally, geologically, ecologically, and to put all this consolidated in one form allows me, as well as readers, to appreciate a landscape, and we hope with our mile by mile descriptions we get you to slow down and stop doing, as fast as you can from here to Napa, but to stop and look at things and appreciate the landscape. It's something I do when I lead nature walks. I tell you, sometimes people go on my walk and it's like, okay, we're going a mile and it's going to take us 2 hours because there's so much to see. If you really slow down, and it's really a much more enriching experience. And we're hoping that our mile by mile guides can get you to do that, to understand how this is just a great landscape.
Quick, do you guys want to share? You said there's a lot of stories in the book. Does anybody want to share one of those stories?
Yeah, I think one of the stories that's just for me is amazing is until we actually put this map together, we did not have a regional map of this commercial trade network that existed before Americans and Europeans showed up here. And this was an incredible network. There are people trading things between the coast and the valley. And the story of the people from Potter Valley on the west side going to trade for salt over on the Sacramento Valley. And they would have to go up and down. They'd go up Horse Mountain and down to the river, and then up over the top of Snow Mountain and down to get their salt, and then pick up the salt and bring it back the whole way. And they have to bring their goods with them. And just thinking about how sturdy these people were and determined, and they could just cover, hey, it's just hard for me to climb up one of those mountains. And they would do this over a period of time to get just for trading. I thought that was an amazing story.
yeah, one of the things too is I talked a little bit about tending the land, and that was Kate Anderson's title of her book. But the cultural burning wasn't just did a lot of burning around their villages, but they also did a lot of burning that would help them with their hunting and gathering. And for instance, they'd go off hunting maybe like a long 2 or 3 day trip. And on the way back, they'd have selected areas where they would burn. So every year they were burning distant pieces of this trail. This was an integrated approach. It wasn't just, oh, we'll burn here, let's burn there. It's like, we're going to burn on the trail coming home. We're going to burn these areas. And next year we'll burn those areas. and the third, fifth year will do in those areas. So it was a very sophisticated management of their environment that helped them with their hunting and gathering. I thought,
Yeah, go ahead.
no.
The other story that pops into my head was that it was really difficult for us to write the cultural diversity section really about the American experience and how the Americans came in, and it really was a genocide, and to detail what was really happening to the native people. And you know, we honor the Berryessas because it's Berryessa Valley and Lake Berryessa. But one of the stories hidden in there was that the Berryessas, they managed the land grant that they got, the Mexican land grant, but they were slave raiders. They would send people over into Indian Valley to the north to steal people to work on their ranch. And it's some of these ugly stories that are part of the history, but it's an important part for us to recognize.
What's amazing to me too is how resilient and persistent Native Americans I've met and their ancestors went through this, and this didn't stop. You know, this has been going on until, I mean, there were the boarding school episodes happened. When was that, in the 20s, 30s, Mark? I mean, it's very recent. They were taking kids from families and sending off to boarding school and telling them they couldn't speak their language and they weren't supposed to wear their native clothing. And it was just, oh, it was this, let's just assimilate them all. And that was not a good idea. But I want to end for me on a high point, I think, is in the governor's office in June 2019 was established the Truth and Healing Council. And this was an executive order that was signed. And in that, there was actually an apology from the state of California, because this has been systematic, to Native Americans for those actions. And so this healing is small steps, but that was a big one, I think. The re-establishment of the reservations that have been taken away was a big step. It's just healthy to see what's happening now. And that's my white guy interpretation of how the world is in my Pollyanna land that I live in. But I think we made a lot of progress.
At 8 o'clock, so we can do one final question. Jeff, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just I like your hiking pace of a half a mile an hour to really understand the areas. So, Mark, is that a something? Do you actually lead hikes on any kind of regular basis, or is there a way to find out about what you're doing?
Well, I have been leading hikes for I live in Davis, so I've been leading hikes for the city of Davis at one of their South Fork Preserve. I've been leading hikes with UC Natural Reserve over in Cold Canyon. I try to do that a few times a year. I've also led hikes for California Audubon out on Bobcat Ranch, which is in Poudre Creek Canyon. It's not something I do on a regular basis. I try to do 2 or 3 of those hikes a year. This last year has been a bit of a disaster for my body. I'm feeling my age, but I'm recovering. So I hope to do some more nature walks this winter and spring, and I can lead some things for Tuleyome. I'm just eager to lead trips for any other groups. It's not your 7 mile hike kind of thing, because it's
Right.
really a sort of understanding nature better.
Yeah, that's what interests me. Thanks.
And there's a comment that I'll let Jeff answer about how to donate. But I also wanted to say that I hope to lead some trail work trips up in the Mendocino National Forest this winter, and they'll get up on the website for Tuleyome. And Tuleyome has a number of other trail maintenance projects throughout. It'll go on throughout the winter too. And Nate Leach has led a lot of those trips for Tuleyome, and Andrew Folks occasionally gets out, and hopefully we'll put him to work. He needs to be out there.
We will.
Jeff, you if people want to donate, how do they?
Yeah, so I'll send out an email tomorrow with the link to the recording, and I'll include information on how to do that in that email. If you want to make a donation to Tuleyome generally, you can go through the QR code on the screen here. Also want to mention that we do have a number of work days and hikes coming up, more than just what I've got on the screen here. So if you head out to our events page, you can get more information on those. And then if you want to learn more about some of the trails going through the monument region, Andrew Folks is going to be giving our January Nature and You lecture, and he'll be diving into all of that.
And if you want to donate for the books, put that when you make a donation online, note that, and that'll go into that kitty, and anything that, you know, that we don't need will go straight to Tuleyome.
That goes for if you're donating via check or anything. Just make sure you let us know so we can make sure the donations go to where you want them to.
All right, so with that, thank you again to Mark and Bob for a great talk, and thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. And I hope to see you back here in January, or perhaps even sooner at one of our hikes or work days. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday evenings.
Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.